Hello everybody and welcome to the video notes for Unit 5, Day 3, and today's lesson is all about relative frequency. Last week we talked about what frequency is. Frequency is how often something happens, and relative frequency is similar to that. Before we get into it, today's video is dedicated to Bellany in 6A. Hi Bellany. This top part is asking us to review how we can convert a decimal into a percent. Starting with the number 1, or 1.00. That's what it is as a decimal. As a fraction, right, we can think of this as 100 out of 100. That's equal to 1. And so the percent out of 100 is 100. So 1.00 or 1 is the same thing as 100%. 0.5, that's the same thing as 5/10, because the 5 right here is in the tenths place. 5/10 is the same thing as 50 out of 100. So 0.5 is the same thing as 50%. It's like having half of something. 0.1, same thing. That's the same thing as 1/10, which is the same thing as 10 out of 100. 10 out of 100 is the same thing as 10%. Right? Percents are always out of 100. Whatever the numerator is out of 100, that's what the percent is. 0.05 is 5 hundredths, because the 5 is in the hundredths place right here. So that's 5 out of 100. So that would be 5%. 0.25 is the same thing as 25 hundredths, because the 5 is in the hundredths place. 25 out of 100, and we know that that's equal to 25%. 0.425, this is a little trickier because this one goes all the way out to the thousandths place. So this would be 425 out of 1,000, which is equal to 42.5 out of 100, which is 42.5%. That last one's a little trickier, but a way that you can think of it differently, the shortcut whenever you want to convert a decimal into a percent is, so if you're going from a decimal to a percent, you move the decimal two places to the right. So anytime you're trying to put a decimal as a percent, you move the decimal two places to the right. Right? For example, 0.05. It's like you're taking this decimal and moving it two spaces to the right. So that's why you got 5%. 0.25. We took this decimal, moved it two spaces to the right. It ends right here. That's why it's 25%. 0.425. We took this decimal, we moved it two spaces to the right and put it in between the 2 and the 5 right there. That's why this became 42.5%. Okay, so now that we've tried that one together, what I would like for you to do is pause and try this set of problems on the right, and then you can resume the video to check your work once you're done. So let's pause and try these on the right. Now you are resuming the video to check your work. One whole, or 1.00, that's the same thing as 100 out of 100, and that's 100%. 0.6, that's the same thing as 6/10, or 60 out of 100, so that's 60%. 0.3, right, if you just move the decimal two spaces to the right, then you would have 30 out of 100, which is equal to 30%. 0.08, right, if you move the decimal two spaces to the right, that's the same thing as 8 out of 100, which is 8%. 0.32 or 32 hundredths is 32 out of 100, so it's 32%. And for the last one, 0.852, this is when it's easiest just to use the shortcut trick, right? If you took this decimal right here and moved it 2 spaces to the right and put it right there, that would be 85.2 out of 100, or 85.2%. Right, now that we know how to convert decimals into a percent, we can move on to the next part of the lesson. What we learned last week was frequency. Frequency means how often something occurs. Frequency is how often something occurs. And the relative frequency is the percent. We're going to use the percent sign here. The percent of the total. Here's what that means. If you look at our table on the bottom, this is the same table that we worked with last week to create a histogram. We have these different cap sizes. Everything that's an extra small, it's if your head circumference, so the size of your head, is between 510 and 530 centimeters. And there were 2 people that had a head size that was an extra small, that were in between these 2 numbers. So the frequency we know is 2. To figure out the relative frequency, we have to figure out what is the percent of the total. 2 is what percent out of all of it. So we first have to figure out what is the total. And there's a space on the bottom of the table where we can write in the total. So we gotta add them all together. For this, you can use a calculator. I have my calculator right here. You can follow along with me on your calculator, or just watch what I'm doing. So we're gonna add up all of these numbers here to get the total. So 2 plus 8 plus 15 plus 9 plus 4 plus 2 equals 40. So altogether, there are 40 people included in this data set. 40 people whose heads we have measured. And now we know the total. And if we know the total, we can figure out if there's 2 out of 40 is what percent of the total. So I'm going to take this 2 right here. That's going to be my numerator. And then I'm going to take this 40, which is the total. So the relative frequency of the people who have an extra small size for their head is 2 out of 40. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fraction and make it a decimal. Now if you remember, this fraction bar is the same thing as 2 divided by 40. So I'm going to divide 2 divided by 40. And it's 0.05. So 2 divided by 40 is 0.05. And then if I have it as a decimal, right, same thing we did up here. Same thing we did up here. You can convert this decimal to a percent. Well, you can take the decimal and move it 2 spaces to the right, and that would give us 5%. So we can say that the relative frequency of people with extra small cap sizes is 5% out of everyone that we asked. Let's do another one. For small, there were 8 people. The total is 40. So this is 8 people out of a total of 40. And this is equal to, I take my calculator, I'm going to divide 8 divided by 40. 8 divided by 40. And I get 0.2. What is this as a percent? 0.2. I can move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. That would put it here. Fill in the blank space with a 0. 0.2 is 20%. So 20% of the total were people that had small-sized caps. I'll do one more together before I'm going to have you do the rest on your own. Medium, it was 15 people. So 15 out of 40 total. I can do the calculator. 15 divided by 40 equals 0.375. What is this as a percent? Move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. That would put it right there, which would give me 37.5%. So 37.5% of the total were people that had medium-sized caps. All right, I'm going to have you pause and finish the rest of this on your own. Once you finish this page, you can raise your hand to get your teacher check. And now you are resuming the video to check your work. 9 people said they were a size large. So that's 9 out of 40 total. Do the math here. 9 divided by 40 equals 0.225. What is that as a percent? Move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. That would be 22.5%. That's the percent of people that have a large size cap. Next one, extra large, 4 people. That would be 4 out of a total of 40. 4 divided by 40 equals 0.1. And you should already know from what you did in the first part that 0.1 or 1/10 is 10%. So 10% of the people have extra large cap sizes. And the last one I'm not going to show you because I want to see that you can do that completely on your own. When you are done, raise your hand and get your teacher check. And with that,
thank you so much for playing my game.